That.
Here we go. All right, Paul, we live, man.
All right, how's it going, man?
Hi, and how are you?
I'm good. I'm sitting in my new office. It's my
Yeah.
tiny.
Where, if you don't mind me asking, man, where are you currently located?
I am East Coast Canada.
You're in Canada.
Yeah, like the only true peninsula in Canada, Nova Scotia.
Okay, man. I'm in Texas, bro.
Right on. We're just a stone throw away. Just a little bit of an angle.
Yeah, exactly. You ever been here? You ever been here in Texas?
Actually, I was in Houston for 9/11.
Really?
I used to be in the trade show industry, and I was doing a big oil and gas show down there, and there was like a 7-day setup, and the day the show opened, 9/11 happened. So I ended up staying in Texas in a condo for 2 weeks until flights got back, till I can get back on a flight back home.
Wow, man.
Yeah,
I,
you could hear a pin drop, man. It was crazy.
I bet. I'm 32 years of age, so I don't quite remember exactly what I was doing when 9/11 hit.
I hear you, man.
Yeah, but
I wasn't even 32 when it happened.
yeah, it's good. So, all right. Well, welcome guys to the Learn and Evolve channel. Today we'll be talking about Qubic. The title of the channel is no, I'm sorry. The title of the video is Discover Qubic, the crypto that thinks for itself. So first, we're going to ask Paul here. Paul, what are your thoughts as far as what is Qubic? What is Qubic to you?
Well, I've mentioned before, I kind of fell into Cubic. I was looking at alternative investments to make in the industry, and being of technologically driven myself, I fell into Tau, bit and sensor Tau. It was pretty expensive. I started looking at some different ones, and actually, I literally fell upon Cubic. And once I realized what it was, which didn't take long, it was pretty fast. The price was climbing, or it was just dropping from its all-time high. My first buy was 100 million for $1,000 US, which
Oh,
is about 1,300 Canadian, just to give you an idea, a little better than that.
mhm.
And then I watched and learned for a bit, and onboarded a couple people at about 4,500 per billion, and uh, and then since then I've been literally DCAing down every chance I got. So
Okay.
Cubic to me is our future. It's everything technology that we grew up believing in, like Star Trek. It's all of that and more. It has the ability to create an environment where, even though humans might want to make choices based on greed or personal desire, or self-preservation for that matter, we always have this underlying me first. AI, Garth, and Cubic will help us evaluate and determine what's best for everyone. I think is probably the best way to look at it. Um,
Yeah.
as it's defined, I should probably say, I like to speak off the top of my head, and for this, being it's my first time on screen, and you've asked me some pretty technically driven questions that I don't normally delve into. I've been
Yeah.
doing a lot of homework in the last couple of days, so I've point formed a lot of this out just so no one thinks that I'm smart, because
Hey,
really the
Paul.
reality is I'm just learning.
Yeah, yeah. Hey,
All
Paul, this
right,
video is going to help a lot of us, man, for real. It's going to help a lot of
all right.
us.
So
Yeah.
what I've written down for what's Cubic is it's a community driven protocol that's driven through CBC, which is quorum based computations. It's owned entirely by the people. Sergey gave it to us by making it open source. He made it anti-military license so that no one entity could take over and essentially control the world. Pinky in the brain. What are you doing tomorrow? That kind of thing. That's what AGI. That's the biggest fear behind AGI, right? Because if we look at AGI as self-learning and the ability to exponentially increase its own intelligence, it wouldn't take long for it to be smarter than humans. And if its only directive was protect humans, well, it would have to eliminate humans. So
Hmm.
I believe that by Qubic coming into the picture right now, it's kind of taking that possibility out, where it's open source, where it's community driven, where it's decentralized in the sense that no decision can be made unless 2/3 of 676 of the nodes, the computers, the units of the miners that train Agarth, um, there's no real way that it can happen. So, um, yeah, I think that it's our future, and I think that people like you and I, who are kind of jumping in with a little bit of blind faith and some education, are so ahead of the curve in terms of, one day we're trying to stack it. We're going to be pulling it out of our bank account.
Yeah. Amen to that, brother. So
Maybe.
when I was on Qubic's website, I was reading about the computers.
Yeah.
If you could, Paul, kind of explain to us as far as what are computers? Are computers computers? Just one singular
No.
computer? Oh,
No. So I think the best way that I can describe this, and really, I just wrapped my head around this morning. Really, I got up nice and early. Um, a computer is you or I with a gaming PC in our bedroom or in our basement that we only play for 2 hours a day. All right. So the other 22 hours a day, it's sitting there idle. And if we set that computer to be a computer, it is now one of the nodes, one of the units that is training Agarth through mining. All right. So if we break that down backwards, we have okay, we got to start with mining, because really the premise of Qubic is built on mining. It's free launch. Sergey himself didn't have any tokens before he started. He's had to mine and or buy his own since the get-go, just like anybody else. That's free
mhm.
launch. Um, because of that, and the way that he's been able to create a useful proof of work versus a useful proof of stake is by using computers, or go back up ahead to nodes. All right, think of it like a node, a mining pool. Each mining pool is one big node, and within that mining pool there can be an unlimited amount of miners underneath it. All right, so
Yeah.
each of these nodes, and there's like, oh crap, I don't know how many nodes there are, but I don't know how many pools there are, but I know that there's over 500,000 computers like me who
Mhm.
are mining Qubic. And I haven't really started yet. I kind of have, but not my own. I got
Yeah.
my first 2 towers back there, 4 more are coming. I'm in. I'm doing this. Um,
Almost there.
anyway, almost there. So each of these nodes, these massive nodes that can have an unlimited number of miners underneath them, are all creating um, Agarth. They're training it. The computational power that's being used to mine is not wasted energy. We're using it to generate an entity that's going to be able to help guide the direction of Qubic in itself. So a computer, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe a computer is the pool, but I believe that the computer is the individual miner. So
Okay.
um, to give that some relevance, every decision made on Qubic is based on 676 computers. Okay, so it's the pools. So the 676 nodes are then in charge of creating all of the decisions, like the 8% CCF fund that we just voted on and passed.
Yeah.
you know, Earning a little bit less mining, but exponential growth in terms of how much revenue that it can generate. Um,
Okay.
each of these nodes are tasked with voting on anything that happens. So if it's something that a human wants to implement, then we present the question to the computers, and the head of those pools has the vote, but they would gather votes or decide for the people underneath them. Now, for any vote to pass, it requires 2/3. So 451 of the computers have to vote yes or no for it to pass or fail. So that's kind of the structure of computers work within the Qubic ecosystem.
Okay, so basically, if I want to launch something on Qubic, uh, any smart contract, it has to go through the computers. It has to go through a vote before it's launched on the Qubic network. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that that's the case for a smart contract to launch. You have to be able to present it to Qubic. Um, I didn't dig too deep into how that process actually happens, but I do know for the grant process, the requirements were that it had to benefit everybody within Qubic. Now, for a smart contract to launch, I know that one of the specifications are that it can't be redundant. So if there's another smart contract that performs a very similar task, it's not going to allow you to create another one that's going to compete or detract from it.
Okay. That's awesome. All right. Just if we could get to the basics, right? When we think of cryptocurrency, we think of blockchain technology.
Hmm.
So I would like to ask, is Qubic a blockchain? I read on the website that I read
No.
the word quorum.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So blockchains, I'm going to check notes on this one because this is another one that I didn't have an absolute immediate knowledge of.
Hmm.
So a blockchain is a decentralized ledger that securely records transactions in linked blocks across networks. All right. So what that means is that it's a decentralized distribution of technology. It's compromised of links containing transaction records. It can be public, so like Bitcoin, or private, like Hyperledger. Um, Uses methods like proof of work or proof of state to validate transactions. Now, the
Hmm.
quorum is essentially it's derived from how Ethereum was created. All right. And the way that that works is that, okay, so Ethereum was initially created as a proof of work, which uses hash rate to determine its answers, to prioritize its solutions. All right. But then, in order to increase scalability, it had to remove, I believe, some of the security, which would be this decentralized side. So
Hmm.
Ethereum now is considered more proof of stake, which is based on making its randomized choices based on how much money a pool has to vote on, I
Yeah.
believe. All right.
Hmm.
So proof of stake is based on the financial side of how much is the choices are being made by the biggest pool owners, and proof of work is based on how fast the hash rate, how many hash rates are being resolved per time. It'll give priority to a randomized answer based on that. All right.
Hmm.
So um, blockchains require, how do I put this? They require networks with enhanced privacy and faster transaction processing. But a quorum, because it eliminates all of these additional steps to validate its answers, for instance, the biggest thing is it runs on bare metal. All right. So when you're mining Qubic, you're not literally running on an operating system. You're actually running it off of RAM. You're running it off of an SSD if you're using a CPU. You're not having to translate between the operating system to the algorithms you're trying to resolve. It's essentially putting all power directly into the algorithms that it's trying to solve. All right.
Hmm.
So relatable to a Mac and a PC. Macs build all of their components in a proprietary location, and they're built to communicate with each other. A PC you can assemble from 100 different manufacturers, put them together, and something's not working because how can 1,000 different manufacturers match the specific requirements of 1,000 different manufacturers for another part? The operating system has to communicate with 100 different styles of CPU and 150 different styles of video cards, whereas a Mac operates entirely on what it was built for. So I guess it's relatable in that sense that we're not going through the process of having to decipher the instructions that are being provided. It's just acting on them.
Okay. All right. And so I want to, thanks for explaining that. I want to move forward towards the tokenomics
All right.
of Qubic. I know before, man, it was was a huge war on X, more specifically with the Casper community, right, about the tokenomics on Qubic. What are your thoughts on the tokenomics?
Well, actually, that was kind of a big hurdle with me because, as you know, I like to share what I know. And when I was introducing Qubic to people who knew way more than I did, they immediately, halted me in my tracks and said, nah, 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 the tokenomics don't make sense. There's just too much max supply. It'll never be reached. There can't ever be value in it. And, it's a wet dream. It's never going to happen. Qubic listened, Sergi listened. They presented Agarth with the question. They presented the computers with the question. Hey, we want to reduce max supply by 80%. We want to make it so instead of 1,000 trillion to match the 21 million Bitcoin, which in reality is 2.1 quadrillion satoshis. All right,
Yeah,
so yeah, because Bitcoin can be broken up into 100 million satoshis each one, right? Whereas Qubic only has one cubic. You can't divide it by a decimal point. It's if you want one cubic, you buy one cubic, or you buy 101 cubic. You don't buy 1.78654321 cubics.
right.
So if we take those tokenomics and we compare them to each other, Qubic would have 2.1 quadrillion compared to a max supply that Qubic could have, matching that, except it would only equate to 1 quadrillion. So the reality is when we were operating at 1,000 trillion total max supply for Qubic, we were still about 33% less inflationary than Bitcoin ever would be. So even though people didn't understand it, didn't make it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we're looking at 200 trillion max supply and a max inflation rate of, I believe it's 1 trillion per week in miners, divided by the 676 computers who then pay their miners underneath them from that equates to about what was it, 1.4 billion cubic per mining pool, divisible by the miners underneath it. So 1.4 billion, or sorry, 1.4. Oh, I got to check numbers. I think it was 1.4
Numbers.
drill. See, this is what they say about numbers on live streams.
Yeah.
But I'm going to get it right. 1 trillion inflation per week, split up between the miners is 1.4 billion, split up or between the pools and then split down. So
Okay.
essentially, even though we have a trillion inflation per week, it doesn't really mean that we're ever going to get anywhere close
Yeah.
to 200 trillion max supply.
Right. So at first we had 1,000 trillion,
Yeah,
and now we have 200 trillion.
correct.
Okay. I'm going to kind of skip some of the questions that we have to our question about decentralization, because that's what brings that's what I think about when it comes to changing some of the things on Qubic is decentralization. So, I mean, how
Absolutely.
decentralized do you think Qubic really is, and why?
Well, so let's look at what we think to be like the strongest, or at least what I've heard to be the strongest decentralized chain in cryptocurrency right now, being something like ICP, entirely online, never offline, the most security that there is. Um, Although Qubic isn't ICP, um, Internet Protocol computers or whatever, Internet Computer Protocol, whatever it is. I didn't dig too deep. I just find it archaic in the sense of the direction we're heading. So that's not something I've ever really dug into. Um, but Qubic's decentralized is on all three levels. There's not just scalability, there's also security, and then there's also what's the other one? Scalability, security, and DeFi. So the
Yes.
three of these combined, I believe, are what makes Qubic as secure as it gets. Not only are we talking about not being able to take control. So, for instance, if we look at someone like Elon Musk, who's just announced that he's got 300,000 computers that are building his own AGI platform.
Yeah,
Um,
I saw that. Yeah.
so So here's the problem here is the cost to doing so, and him creating it himself immediately removes this decentralized from it, right? Because now you got somebody that owns it, directs it, and programs it. Whereas Qubic has 500,000 miners, which are comprised of 676 of the top pools that are being paid. Um, and each of those pools can have, like I said, unlimited amounts. So if we got 500,000 and we've got 10 pools, that's 100,000 computers in each pool, right? So I guess we got to use 676. I don't know the math, but the reality is that even if Elon Musk tried to take over Cubic, it would be near impossible to ensure that he had 451 pools with unlimited amount of miners underneath him that he would have to pay for and create in order to change the decision making process of Cubic, which is what makes it so secure. But then even if he was able to, even if he wanted to invest that much money into deciding the future of Cubic, once it was recognized by Agarth or anybody else within the Cubic back end, they would immediately vote to just restrict him. So all
Mm,
that money invested into all these miners to change the decision making process would now be excluded from the actual 676 who do make the choice. So, in regards to decentralized finance, in regards to the security behind it, although Cubic is just on the cusp of launching and creating and making real world application out of all of these things, right now it's just on paper, right?
mm,
Um, like I said, people like you and I who can see where it could be are the ones who are going to be able to take advantage of the exponential growth and the value of it when it happens.
man, I'm excited.
Me too, man. Like you wouldn't believe.
Yes, sir. All right. So you mentioned earlier about AI, Garth. Uh, if you could you explain to us what is AI, Garth?
All right, so Agarth is
Hey, Garth.
I'm I'm just gonna go back here.
Sure.
So Agarth is a platform that uses blockchain technology to offer easy to use tools and solutions. It's encouraging teamwork and new ideas in the field of artificial intelligence. So what that means is that every time a transaction, a transfer, um, any instance that Agarth is called upon or is learned due to the computational power of the miners, enables um, growth. It allows it to learn from previous history and build on how it can execute it better, faster, more efficiently next time. Um, that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's
Mm,
just in regards to idle computational power, being able to identify when you're not playing your game, pulling the power out of there to train Agarth and mine Qubic for you at the same time.
mm-hmm.
Um, we can go so much deeper into that, and in regards to like, you know, um, how will it change our lives? How will it make a difference other than the fact that one day I'm going to own my island, right? It's on top of this. We could look at education, um, where it's maybe able to use AI-driven educational tools that allows it to adapt to my own personal learning styles, and then teach me in a way that I'm more prone to learn based on past experiences of it teaching me in the first place. All
Mm-hmm.
right. Healthcare. Think about something like diabetes, right? So not all medication works with every single person. So if we if we look at how we go through trial and error with medications with people in regards to how we try to, hide the symptoms, not cure the cure or provide the cure, then we're presented with, what if we could take all that data in one area and let Agarth at it and say, okay, based on these 100,000 different instances of failure, the most common reason is X. And if we took a solution that hasn't ever been implemented, but based on this information I learned is plausible, we can go into like real world trials on the back end and literally cure it. You know,
Mhm.
we could take away the doctor's "I can't cure you" statement with, you know what? How can we fix you on a more personal level? Um, Economics, uh, like banking system, you know, like Qubic's feeless, right? Every time I use my bank card, I pay 30 cents. If I want to send a wire, it costs me $50, you know? I can literally send you a billion Qubic right now worth 2,200 or 2,260 bucks US, wherever it's at. And it costs me absolutely nothing. And it costs you nothing. But,
Yeah.
but by activating the smart contract, which allows that transaction, a fee is generated on the back end. And then those fees go towards paying proportionally to shareholders who bought the IPO. You know, so we're literally taking away the control of governments to have, you know, $1 billion payouts to the board while we're suffering on the back end trying to keep up with inflation.
Wow.
Um, yeah,
It's
and so many more. But yeah, I think that kind of took care of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, with all that being said, it sounds like it'll be expensive to do. Do you think it'll be expensive to do for society to adapt AIGAR or AGAR?
Agarth? Well,
Yes.
no, because the people who are investing in it through mining are being paid back in turn with Qubic, right?
Mhm.
So the reality is implementation is solely contingent on adaption, and that adaption doesn't cost anything other than education. And people like me and you who are willing to stand up and put our face behind what we know allows growth to happen exponentially. You
Mhm.
know, if 5 people watch this and each share it with 5 people, you know, we're in the Head and Shoulders commercial now. You know, you tell 5 people and they tell 5 people and they tell 5 people, and you got all these beautiful women washing their hair, and then all of a sudden they're blinded by this is what I'm doing.
Mhm.
You know, I believe truly that when it happens, it's going to happen so fast that people are going to be chasing those candles up. And as people create wallets, and I believe there's over 500,000 wallets of Cubic right now. So even if we split that up by 10 wallets, and I only have a few, 2 or 3, if we split that up by 10, that's still 50,000 people that are
Mhm.
actively using Cubic, you
Yeah.
know, actively buying on exchanges, actively causing these transactions to happen. Um, yeah, the only thing that's inhibiting the growth right now is one, um, um, the scientific papers that are being developed right now on Agarth and its proof of use, useful proof of work, which is the only blockchain in the world that actually has useful proof of work for a chain. Um, Once we have the education that I just mentioned, the adaption is just going to be it's going to be a flood. It's going to be education and medicine and finance and autonomous vehicles. Elon Musk is going to be begging for the ability to implement Agarth on his autonomous system that runs every one of his vehicles. Uh,
Let's
and and
go.
then and then picture this, not just every privately owned vehicle, but every form of transportation on the planet, you know, in like 10, 15, 20 years can be simultaneously controlled by Agarth while it's
Wow.
plotting star system courses into the universe, you
Wow.
know, unmanned spaceships that continually collecting and evaluating data and providing feedback to us on where we can eventually go to live,
Hmm.
you know.
So you mentioned is inexpensive, and then also,
Oh, sorry. Yes, inexpensive because it's people like us. We're not
yeah.
buying Qubic isn't buying the computers to create the platform that allows the growth, right? It's the miners who are doing it, and these mining pools are massive. Like I know a guy that manages 500 computers, and that's
Wow.
all. And that's what's happening. And then there's others, I believe, in Asia that are like 5,000 computers in each pool. You know, massive amounts.
Yeah.
So yeah, the cost just isn't there. We don't pay anything to use it. The only time you're ever going to pay anything to make a transaction in Qubic is to send an asset. So if you own a share, whether it's a QX, the Q wallet share, or the MLM, the Web3 gaming that's going to launch here right away. It's pretty, I'm into that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know how much gaming I'll be doing, but I own some shares.
Kind of looks
Um,
like Grand Theft Auto in a way, just a little bit, right? Just a little bit.
but yeah, but in the 90s and zombies and so intrinsically real to life that you require water to and food to live, and you can kill the dimensional and use them as food, or rent a vehicle to get from one side of town to the other, which is exactly 4 kilometers by 4 kilometers, divisible by 4092 pixels each way. So
Mm,
each pixel is actually like 200 feet or something, whatever it works out to. So,
mm,
and then opening stores within it, and transacting, and true economy that happens inside of it. Um,
mm.
there's just so much. So as I was saying, if I was to send you, if you bought a share from me, for me to send that share to you would cost me 1 million cubic. So
Got you.
pennies right
Right.
now, one day.
Yeah, I mean, I had sent a friend some Qubic. I'm in Texas. He's in Nigeria,
Yeah,
and he got it just like that, and it was cheap to send. I was like,
nothing.
man, this is amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, you talk about just like that, um, you look at all the blockchains that are out there, right? You got Bitcoin. It can do what, maybe 3 or 5 transactions per second or something like that, something crazy. Um, Bitcoin is more of a store of wealth for the ability to manipulate it by companies like Greystone and BlackRock. They're already doing it, right? I don't even call it that decentralized anymore, simply for the fact that they own so much, they're manipulating it. But then you got Ethereum, the cost, $2 to hell. I think the most I ever paid was like $90 in the midst of like December, January of last year, or the
Yeah,
beginning of this year. Um, or Solana, which is, cheap. And supposed to be one of the faster ones. I think it was 7,000 transactions a second or something. But it lacks all of the oomph that Qubic delivers. A lot of blockchains out there have some good things to them, but I believe that Qubic has taken those things. And when I say Qubic, I mean Sergi, come from beyond. He took these things into consideration. Like, the man is absolutely brilliant. He's developed the first useful proof of work blockchain. He co-founded IOTA, which was, I believe, the #1 performing crypto of the entire history of crypto. And then NXT, he founded that one, which I believe was the #3 um, growth performer of all of crypto.
hmm
So taking those things that he's learned and enhancing on them, he's literally created um, what I've been saying, our future.
I don't know if this is true. I think he was talking about Qubic in the like around 2008 or 2009 or something like that. I
Mhm.
don't quote
100%
me.
true.
That was
Yeah, no,
that's
it is
true.
true. It was, I actually wrote it down. I made a note of it because I thought it was brilliant too. And this is something that I did learn quite a while ago. Um, Essentially, as the folklore goes, is he was the third person to ever mint Bitcoin. He has more than a couple vanity wallets that he's never even opened. Um, the last one that I saw in the Discord, I believe it was at $9 million that was in it. So I don't think he's ever going to hurt for money ever. Um,
Yeah.
Never. But what I'm getting at is he's had Qubic in his mind for the last 13 years ish, and 13 or 14 years, and only now has technology caught up to what he's envisioned it being. So it's not like he didn't want to create it sooner. He's just never had the ability, based on what we have available to us right now, to create it. Now we do. Now we're getting there. Now with how he solved the computational power, how where Qubic is the biggest, it's the strongest, it's the fastest, it's the most computational power on a global level by leaps and bounds. Not
Mhm.
one of these other blockchains like ICP or any of them, none of them can handle the transactions required to take it to a global scale. None of them. There's just no possible ability. They don't have the money to create the the power to do it. Whereas right now, Qubic has that through miners like you, I, and other people. We're
Right.
using we're using the idle computational power of all these people who are committed to growing this company, and it's created the biggest, fastest, strongest computer in the world.
Yeah. And that leads me to my next question is having the fastest transactions per second, is it really that important to you, or do you think that's a priority, or what do you
Well,
think
let's put
about
it this way: at 55 million transactions a second, which it's not operating on at the moment. I believe it's 40 million is what we've actually real world tested at. But tested on the back end at over 200 million per transaction, or I should say per transfer. Um, this means that I believe even at 40 million, you could take every single Interact, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, every financial transaction that's happening in the world and do it all right now. So yeah, hugely important for scalability, for adaption. Um, Not only that, because we're quorum based, we can communicate with every other blockchain. So that means we're not just talking about transferring wealth by fiat, by traditional currency, but we can also transfer wealth on any other chain. And any other chain, regardless of the layer it's at, can be built under Qubic, on Qubic. So this means that our oracles are able to communicate with every other chain and every financial institution out there in a real world environment and allow us to be the hub of distribution in the easiest way I can put it.
yeah.
And that doesn't
When
have to be just finance. That could be information. That could be data transfer. That could be computational power. That could be creating a new language every day of the week for a year straight while it's doing everything else.
hmm I'm telling you, when we get there, man, when Qubic expands, I'm gonna have the Qubic Visa card. It's gonna have the Qubic logo on it. I'm gonna have all types of Qubic shirts. You see me with the Under Armour shirt on. This needs to
Hey,
the logo just need to change to the Qubic logo, man. I'm gonna be Qubic out, dude.
let me tell you, this is going to lead me to something that I don't even know if I'm allowed to say or not, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway.
Uh-oh.
Um, yeah. and I'm not. And I'm really not. I'm not involved with Qubic on any level other than I love it. But I've been asked to help create the merch store for North
Oh,
America. So yeah, it's coming and it's coming soon.
yeah, man. You're gonna be listening to me, bro. I'm be in your inbox, brother. I'm gonna need
Yes, I'm
some
telling
merch.
you. Yeah, I know, and it's merch for everything, clothing for um, cups and mugs and keyboards or keypads, whatever. We're working on that, but essentially, it was up for a little bit. But my buddy he negotiated the process to be held by Qubic within Qubic, so it's not going to be a personal venture so much as it is going to be to help the Qubic community within. So it's pretty cool. It's really nice to be a part of that side of it. Um,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right.
Something else
Well,
that's been going on too in Eastern countries is Middle East is racing and banners and sponsorship, and this is all happening on the back end on a personal side. This isn't necessarily Qubic driving it. I don't know if they are. I only know a little bit of it, but we're growing quick, and the image, the brand, hiring serotonin to help us deliver our message massive, massive in regards to how people learn, right? And we've already seen that through a couple of little teaser videos that have been done,
mhm.
And then we got people like Rudy, who's doing these videos on his own in his spare time because he absolutely sees and he envisions where it's going to be, you
So
know.
shout out to my guy Josh Kirby, man. I don't know if you
Hell
follow
yeah,
Kirby. He does it.
yeah.
He has good art as well, man. Shout out to him.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And I've got to know all these people in the back end just through interactions. Like with you, I actually literally met you through listening
with
with the
Chad.
chosen Chad,
Yeah,
chilling with Chad or chilling
yeah.
Cubic and chill, chilling with
Shout out
Chad.
to Chad and NATO.
Yeah, man. Like, see, these are the things, and they're the first spaces I ever got in on and listened to. You know, Crystal Days or Crypto Days. He's
Mhm.
um, he's like a social media guy. He
CFB,
was
man.
probably
Comedian.
yeah, community rep. He was the first post that I ever saw on Cubic. When I started looking at AI, I saw his post. And it was literally that moment that I just dug in, and that led me to every step that I've had since. So
Mhm.
community driven in the sense that for us too,
Yeah.
you know.
So, so what do you see Qubic in the next 5 to 10 years? Where do you
Oh
see it?
man, I've got all these envisions of grandeur, Yeah, 100%. Like something near term, adaption. That's going to be the first phase. It's going to happen within the next 5 years, I believe. In fact, December 4th is when, if everything goes as planned, Agarth is released without control. Just here's Agarth. It is now operating independently based on instructions to learn and be better.
Oh,
Right
so
now, I
it's
believe
going to launch before 2027?
December 4th is the day it's supposed to launch of this year, 2024. Now,
Oh,
that
okay.
that doesn't mean that it'll be fully trained and operational, but and I believe that 27 is when I think that they're talking about when it's going to be fully adapted into everything.
Mm,
Um, that being said, just the fact that if all it's doing is helping create efficiencies through miners and idle computational power, that's only going to advance us, exponentially faster, right?
mhm,
As it's able to solve problems based on past use, create faster transactions and more efficient, where we're using only 10% of the energy we are right now. Well, now we can start, distributing some of that. In fact, the very first suggestion received back from Agarth after because like it's out there right now, right? That's been, I think it was mid-June, early June. Agarth was actually put into the internet. Um, some real restrictions on it, I believe, but and I'd have to check, but I believe it was released at the intelligence of about a toddler. And in the first 18 days, it was performing as fast as the neurons fire in the human brain. So, of an adult. So, like
mhm.
smarter than me already because I'm barely a teenager half the time.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what this means is that it came back and said, hey, you know what? With all the mining that's going on right now with these 500,000 different computers, um, I've determined that if we operate at 50% of the power that we're using right now, so mine for an hour, idle for an hour, mine for an hour, idle for an hour. If we're doing that, it can still mine 100% of the cubic as if it was operating at 100%. All right. So it suggested that, hey, instead of putting all of my resources into mining at 100% power, why don't we take 50% of my power and we sell that computational power to another um, entity, another chain that wants to mine their own tokens. And because we're so efficient, it's actually beneficial for them to rent out our computational power versus trying to build their own network. Now, what Sergey is saying is that with the fiat, the currency earned from renting it out, we just take that and immediately buy Qubic and then burn it out of existence. All right.
Yeah.
That number, based on the computations that he's done, but his best assessments is like $5 million a week USD.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
he
what
and
you
he's
meant by 50% mine and 50% idle?
50% computational power being rented out is valued at $5 million US per week.
Wow.
So that's like $20 million worth of cubic burned every single week, 80 million a month. Tokenomics are something that people really need to dig into because we are on we're on course to um, surpass any expectations that people even thought were moon mathed. You know,
Mhm.
I talk big numbers and I have these big aspirations and I say we're going to be here and we're going to be there. And most of the time I'm talking out of my ass because I have nothing to prove it other
Mhm.
than my own belief in what's being created.
Yeah, and that, I mean, what do you say to people that just shun us because we're going off of, what we believe and what we envision versus the results?
It's happening without you. Bottom line, here's the deal. when we switched from horse and carriage to the Model T Ford, do you know how many ranchers were pissed off that they couldn't sell horses anymore? You know,
Mm,
when we when we made slavery illegal, do you know how many cotton plants fought tooth and nail through lobbyists to make sure that they could still own people? But we still changed. You know, we look at what we're at today. People are fighting tooth and nail, and they're screaming, "I want my gas guzzling car. I love the ba 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 bum sound of it." But electric vehicles are coming, regardless if we want to believe it or not. And maybe electric vehicles are only a transitional phase. Maybe it's going to be hydrogen, where we're literally running off of water vapor. And ultimately, I believe that that's where we're going, right?
wow.
So, but in order to transition to the technology that requires hydrogen powered vehicles, we need an interim to break our dependence on fossil fuels. So yeah,
Wow.
regardless if you see it, whether you're able to understand it, um, I'll explain it a few different ways to you. And if I'm getting nothing but laughed at, I'm just gonna keep on going and wave when I go by.
Drop mic.
That's it. That's all there is to it.
Or Paul, I appreciate your time, man. This is the first. This is the first for me, and also the first for Paul to be speaking here live on camera. So you
Yes.
guys, yeah, this is a special
I'm gonna
video.
throw a few other things out there if I can, just
Yeah,
because I
sure. Yeah,
want to. So MLM, the game, it's being right now. People who own safe houses and assets are today. They're actually safe houses from 150 up, I believe, are now being able to be selected. So we're in the beta phase to the extreme that there's nothing even on the map. We're just selecting where our safe houses are going to go. The swapping into assets like vehicles or pets or swapping out into booster points is all pretty much done now, I believe. We're the next couple months is going to be back end play, and then when it opens up, like the world of Web3 gaming is going to experience the transition like we watched with the horse and carriage into the vehicle. It'll literally, I believe it's the only system that has in-game economy, that's transferable to a real-world environment.
Mm,
I can go in there and I can create a safe house to sell my merchandise for Qubic. You could buy it inside the safe house with Qubic, and it ships to your door in real life. You know, you can
amazing,
uh, you can get a copy of your shirt that you buy to wear in the game, and it matches what you wear in real life. It,
amazing.
and this is just the beginning. Um,
Mhm.
you know, talk about oh geez, where's my true love into this? Um, I've got so many. Um,
And just imagine
MLM.
these games are changing, right? I remember last cycle, I think the biggest game in token was Axie Infinity.
Okay.
I don't know if you know about Axie Infinity.
No, I've
Uh,
seen it since though.
oh,
I
you seen it
Yeah,
since? I
I
mean, no
believe I've
disrespect to them, but I mean, the graphics were okay. The game was all right, but
yeah,
it did so many X's, man, and made a lot of people money.
yeah.
And to transition to what we're doing, what Qubic is doing, launching MLM, it's just a game changer, man.
Well, my son is 15, and he has a gaming PC that he's about to upgrade with his own money right now, because he understands when I talk about ROI on investing in a deck into his own mining rig that he can use to game anyway, because he needs to update his video card and his CPU and his GPU. So we're gonna pick and choose to make it the most efficient possible to mine. Now, even if this costs him 1,500 or $2,000, the ROI on that is anywhere between 3 months to a year. But then after that, and that's factoring in just only today's prices of Qubic. You know, as
Right.
the price goes up, the more people that mine, the less Qubic you actually get. But because you're getting less and the value is higher, you're essentially making more, until a
Mm,
point where the value is so high that you're making exponentially more,
right.
right? Um, and he sees that. He's like, "Oh, I want to save for a car." I said, "Then, well, it's time you understand what passive income means."
He's 15.
15.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that he gets into MLM because then he could manage all my assets, and I'll literally pay him to do it,
Yeah.
right? Because if
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm so the way it works when you're a shareholder, when you own a share inside of Qubic from an IPO, all right, so you can either bid on it through a Dutch auction in an IPO, initial public offering of whatever smart contract is being launched. So I was actually introduced to smart contracts through MLM because it was the only one that I was part of Qubic with when it launched. And so I started playing, and I accidentally bid on one of those shares for like 3.2 billion Qubic, and all I had was like something like, I don't know, maybe 1.2 billion at the time. So I
Wow.
was all worried, right? I get on Discord and I'm asking him, like, and then Come From Beyond answered himself. He's like, "Don't worry about it. If it's not there, it's just gonna roll out and phase you. Don't worry, nothing's gonna
Mhm.
happen." So for a week, I played and I bid, but everything was going for like 700, 800, a billion Qubic, and MLM was one of the cheapest ones that launched. Um, but what happens is the number of shares that you accumulate gives you the proportional, and every share has 676 shares, just like the computational power and all of that. So every smart contract has 676 shares, and then the number of shares that you have defines what your dividend payments, what your fee structure payments are, proportional to the number of shares you own. Now, I couldn't collect shares at a rate that would do much for me at the time, right? Because I only had very limited resources when it came to Qubic. When you think about something like QX, the Qubic exchange, I believe they launched at, I think they were 18 billion Qubic was one share when what during the IPO. I believe that that's about the range. After that, they're selling at like 28 billion a share.
Wow.
And well, the reason why is if you think about an exchange, something like Uniswap or MetaMask or something, and you look at the number of transactions that happens, if you own one share, that's equivalent to about 5,000 US in dividends a week, once it's launched and running,
Mhm.
and then exponentially higher after that. Or a share like Random, like that share is it's worth about 2 billion right now. And every time Agarth is called into action, every time training happens, dividends are paid to shareholders.
Mhm.
So um, Clottery, every time you make a bet, dividends are paid to shareholders. So, which is going to totally lead me into one I'm super excited about, Qubic Capital. My
Yeah.
buddy, uh, my buddy Wolf, he's built a gold mine there. We've
Oh, Wolf
already
is the
got,
one that built Cubic Capital. Is that correct?
yeah, he's the guy behind it. He's,
Okay.
I don't know who he is. I don't know his age. I believe he's in Paris. I have no idea though. I know that he's an accountant and he just finished taking his master's in finance. And he actually took his exams while building Qubic. So what he did is he created a pool, like a mutual fund or an ETF that takes all of money, like from people like you and I, all of our Qubic. We buy shares. It started at 10 million per share, and now it's at 13.5 million per share. And so already anybody who invested in the first round made 30% already. And by next public round, I'm thinking we're going to be, and I'm speaking out of my butt because I don't have anything to say that it will happen, but I believe it'll be around 15 million a share. You know, um, that being said, the number of shares we own pay us proportionally to the number of smart contracts we've accumulated. And I think we're somewhere around like four QX, and I think soon to be five, maybe like eight or nine random, eight or nine clottery, and we have two MLMs. But all of the income generated, and this is mid October, where people start actually earning off of their share ownership. We're going to start That'll start trickling in terms of like pennies or dollars right now, but eventually maybe like hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars, depending on percentage of ownership within Qubic Capital. And he's creating a smart contract right now, and he's actually creating a system which which will allow us to hold all of our own shares and trade it within any Qubic wallet, just like we do right now with any of the other smart contract assets. So
So, what is the process of being a part of Cubic Capital?
buy a share. That's it. That's all.
Is there a website? Is there a link to?
You know what? It's go to Qubic Capital on Twitter, and all the information is there on how to get into Discord and stuff. Right now, it's a private round. Um, but I'll see what I can do to, maybe I'll sell you a share. Then it's not private anymore.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'll talk to Wolf, but I'm not sure how that works. Usually you can only get in during a public round. Now that being said, once the smart contracts launched, anybody at any time can buy a share, sell a share, own multiple. It doesn't matter. It'll all be decentralized. Wolf won't be in charge. It'll just be released to the system. It'll pay dividends based on percentage of shares owned. It's the biggest leverage play in Qubic that nobody's looking at. Bottom line. At least
Hands
that's
down.
how I see it.
Yeah. I mean, I ran across Qubic Capital, but out of my own ignorance, I haven't done a lot of research, as far as how it can benefit society. But from listening to you, I definitely need to get into the Qubic Capital.
You need to start stacking, man.
Yeah.
Your Qubic sitting there, and it's going to appreciate based on the price of the coin, but that price of the coin is going to appreciate anyway, right?
Yeah.
When you own one of these shares, it's appreciating on top of the appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
So 13.5 million today, to sell that share in a year at 13.5 million could be worth, instead of $25, it could be worth $250 or $2,500 for that one share, right? Now, once the new year comes, once the smart contract launches, we're going to do a share split of 100 to 1. So every share you own is going to give you 100 shares. It'll, of course, split the price, but the reasoning for that is to be able to allow anybody to own a piece of the smart contracts to get into earning dividends, right? It's funny, how I met Wolf was actually Qubic and Chill. It was the first time I jumped onto a Spaces and spoke with Chad. And
Wow.
it was
Chad
because, yeah, man, it was because I saw a post that Wolf posted, and tell me what you think Qubic Capital is, and you can win a free share. And as much as I love giving away stuff, I hate entering contests. I find it so laborious and it just drives me nuts. So anyway, I only because I was curious, I put an answer. Totally wrong. Didn't win. Didn't matter. I was so dismissive of Qubic Capital. I didn't even care what it was. And then when I heard he was speaking, I tuned in and I jumped in and I started asking him questions. I'm like, tell me about it. What is this? Why does it seem so hokey to me? And why don't I get it? And he literally just said, it's like a mutual fund. And I was like, bang, done. I don't know that he used those terms, but essentially what he said is it's a pool that allows us to have the buying power to go against the whales. And right now, we're shooting for being a top 5% owner of every smart contract launch. And I believe already right now we're in that range with Random, I think. I'm not sure. So
Dude, we need to get Wolf on here.
it's
We need to
huge.
get Wolf on here.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's the thing, man. Somebody really needs to interview him to a point that people can understand better than I can relay it, because all I know is it's printing money, and that's all I care about, really. I understand some of the basics behind it, but the reality is there's a lot more to it than I know.
Paul, any final words before we end the stream?
No, I'm good. I've enjoyed this a lot. I hope I didn't make too many mistakes. I'm sure I'll hear about it though.
Right? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Paul, I think you did a great job, man. Thank you for your time. And to the people that's listening, thank you for tuning in. Until next time.